Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Right Off Track. I'm your host, Anya Smith, and today we have an exceptional individual to introduce to you. Get ready to embark on a journey into the world of innovation, human-centric workplaces, and personal growth. Joining us today is Bonnie Davis, a name synonymous with transformation and empowerment. Bonnie is a speaker, executive coach, cultural consultant, writer, co-owner of HuWork. With a passion for reshaping the way we approach work and leadership, Bonnie dives headfirst into the realm of empathy, authenticity, and laughter while seamlessly intertwining them with productivity, profitability, and innovation. Imagine a workplace where people's best selves thrive, where teams work harmoniously, and where leaders foster growth. Bonnie has been instrumental in revitalizing cultures and developing leaders at prominent companies like Apple, Facebook, and Lululemon. Her expertise extends from crafting more human workplaces to owning leadership and management skills, nurturing powerful coaching and conversations, and even sustaining healthy work life wellness habits. Armed with over 2 decades of Fortune 500 corporate experience, Bonnie brings a wealth of wisdom to every endeavor. From speaking at conferences to writing for Forbes, her impact is undeniable. And let's not forget her deep involvement in volunteer work, proving her dedication to make a difference. Bonnie's educational journey includes a master in organizational psychology from Columbia University and a bachelor's in psychology and business administration from American University. This has equipped her with the tools to transform workplaces from the ground up. She's certified by prestigious institutions such as Coaches Training Institute, International Institute for Facilitation, and Voices 360, showcasing her commitment to continuous growth. But Bonnie is more than just a professional powerhouse. She's a driven New Yorker who has found solace in vibrant landscapes of Denver, Colorado, alongside her husband and teenage children. As she likes to say, everything's better when it happens outside, a testament to her zest for life. So, if you're ready to uncover the secrets to crafting human centric workplaces, embracing authenticity, and fostering growth, you're in for a treat. We're about to delve deep into Bonnie Davis's incredible journey and learn how she's making the world a more human place, one organization at a time. Welcome to the show, Bonnie. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hi, Anya. I'm so happy to be here.
And I want to do a quick shout out to the Changing Workplace Collective for getting us opportunity to meet. It's an organization, if you haven't heard of it, or a community of mindful and thoughtful business leaders and initiatives that come together to support one another. So I'm really grateful we got to meet through there.
I am too. One of my top two strengths is connector in the standout strengths profile.
Yeah.
And it has just fed that for me, being able to meet wonderful people like you and like in rapid fire, so many at one time. So I've been thrilled with that. It's been really
Oh,
fun.
and I feel like this discussion is so timely right now. As somebody who was in the corporate world for so long and now kind of taking the step out of it and reflecting about my experience, it's a challenging time. Like so many changes are happening after the COVID pandemic. People are going to remote workplace setting, and the culture kind of is shifting, especially as we go through the challenges like the layoffs. So could you maybe share a little bit of background, like to what your experience has led you to this innovative field of workplace kind of cultural development, and maybe what are some current trends that you're seeing that you're passionate dealing with right now?
Well, I'll start out and I'll keep it short, but I just sent my son off to college. He's a freshman. And so it's really brought me back to the thinking about my own start and being what was my major and how did I know what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so I always thought I wanted to be a business major, but I never knew what I wanted to do with that. I had an image of wearing a power suit in a Manhattan office building, which is funny because like the yoga pants in my either my home or my backyard or my office in Denver is very far from the vision I had back then. But I did achieve the vision and it was fun at the time and it fed me at the time. And yet I didn't know what I wanted to do with business. Then I started psychology classes. I loved psychology, but I still had the business vision. And so then I discovered organizational psychology, which is the combination of the two, which just really fed me this idea of helping people be their best at work. So that is still all these years later what feeds me. But doing it in corporate America felt like I had to put on a face, put on a mask, everything from the business suit and the clothing that didn't quite feel right to the feeling like I couldn't fully speak up in meetings, feeling like I was the young one in the room, often the only female in the room. I played the game and I did well, but it just never felt like it was fully me. And
Hmm.
so 11 years ago, I had the opportunity to make my last employer into my first client as a consultant. On a personal note, my husband, he was an entrepreneur. His company was just bought. And so we could flip roles so that I became the entrepreneur. And I
Wow.
started doing this full time. And at the time, my kids were pretty young. So it also fit for my lifestyle and the kind of mom I wanted to be. And in those 11 years, I have only found that the need for helping people be their best at work on a team level, an individual level, and an organizational level, it has only gotten greater and greater. I love that there's more demand for this in the world. And particularly, I think COVID sped up the need for people to really rethink what it means to be in an office, what it means to be a high performing team, what it means to have boundaries, what does it mean
Yeah.
to be a leader who embraces wellness. So those are all things that I am excited about and I love helping other people with.
Oh, that's amazing. And do you mind if we dive into that little point you mentioned how you turned your employer to your first client? That's amazing. And you also mentioned that your husband was an entrepreneur. So I'm curious, like when you decided to make a transition, what inspired you? Was it a combination of seeing kind of your husband do something? Was it also just the opportunity to make that transition? Can you share a little bit more what that looked like for you?
Yeah, it was a whole bunch of things. It's funny in life, sometimes things happen in the right time and place. And I
Yeah.
think we need to be present and aware because sometimes we can be clueless to those signs. But I was working in a company, I was responsible for the employee engagement of 20,000 people. And
Cool.
I had this aha that I wasn't feeling very engaged. So I was lacking some authenticity in my role.
Mhm.
It was also, they were doing a lot of budget cuts. And so I was just the old fashioned do more with less.
Yeah.
And within all of this, we were launching a leadership program. So that is of the many things I love, helping leaders expand their capability is really, if you ask me, like, what's the number one thing?
Yeah.
It's probably in there and still through the lens of creating a human centered workplace,
Yeah.
but really leadership capability. And so I had just created a leadership program that we were trying to find an outside facilitator to lead. So I
Mm.
was doing these pilots and I felt so lit up. I felt like sitting at my desk and being drowned in email and PowerPoint. And then suddenly I was in front of groups and I was like really feeling alive in a way I hadn't in a few years. So I remember it was a holiday weekend. It was President's weekend, and my husband and I were out on a date night. Babysitter, little kids were at home. And I said to him, I'm really thinking about raising my hand and saying, I want to be the facilitator for this program because it's just giving me that sense of aliveness that I hadn't felt in a while. And he said, well, then go for it. And so went into
Aw.
work. I basically quit my job and I said, I'd like to become the facilitator. And I gave the pitch and they said, well, we hate to see you go, but it makes sense.
Hmm.
That was a Monday. Tuesday, the next day, the CEO and his team met and they decided big budget cuts, no training, no travel until the next fiscal, which started October 1.
Ooh.
So literally 24 hours, it came and went. And so I'm like devastated. Like, I was high achieving. I always had a great job. Who am I? I just quit this great job with no job. That was just not part of my identity. And it's a bigger story, but the next day I met somebody in my network who like immediately fed me a project with Microsoft through somebody in
Ah.
Faircon. So it just like all the pieces came together at once. And you asked about did my husband his entrepreneurship? I think there was a sense of like yes, it can work,
Yeah.
but it was also a risk thing of like honestly just not wanting to take that risk of us both being entrepreneurs at the same time.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you for being so genuine about this experience. And I didn't know that it didn't work out in a good way. Isn't that amazing?
In a good way. Yeah. Ironic. You know what? Sometimes we just need that motivator to give us the push.
Yeah.
And it was the push. And so I am really I believe in things are meant to be, things happen for a reason in life. And so
Yeah.
I think that was the push that got me to quit the really good corporate job and take on the risk. And it
Oh.
certainly all worked out.
Well, I appreciate you inspiring me personally because that was me 3 months ago getting laid off. And I was not that I intentionally made it happen, but I knew this could be happening. And so I was thinking about how do I make this an opportunity? And now a big part of me is immensely grateful for this opportunity and thinking this is the best thing that happened to me. And at the same time, I have my own moments of doubt. in
Of course.
terror, like what is happening? But I think that's part of the journey. That's the real, like it's not always like, oh, I have it all figured out and the universe is on my side. Sometimes it's like, yes, but yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, being in the car were my moments. Like I had more downtime to think, and I would do
Yeah.
the like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I just quit a real job. What am I doing? So yeah, that is fully normal that we second guess and then brush it off and regroup.
Yeah. And do you mind me diving now? HuWork. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Let me know if
Yes.
I'm butchering that. But how did that come about? So from going from a project, which kind of serendipitously, in a serendipitous way, came together, which is amazing. How did that, one thing lead to you starting a business, and
Yeah.
now where you are helping top companies in the world facilitate these topics?
Well, I think I've always believed in the buddy system. So the only half marathon, I grew up very unathletic. The only half marathons I've run have been training with friends, doing the race with friends. And so, with that thinking of buddy system, about 4 years ago, I had a few friends that I had been doing projects with. So, we each had our own businesses. And
Awesome.
we decided, wouldn't it be more powerful if we went from a me to a we? So we decided to join forces and create HuWork. And it was really fun to create the name, by the way. We were very
Mm.
fortunate. We had a friend who does professional marketing and branding in our own business. She sat down with us. We had a few sessions to really, in a professional way, brainstorm what's most meaningful. And we were kind of stuck. And suddenly the word human came up, and we were all like,
Mm.
that's it. Stop everything. And so then we put together, of course, different combinations, and you have to look up what companies exist. So HuWork, the Hue is
Yes.
short for human, inspiring humans at work is what we're all about,
Right.
because we all had that similar experience. We were all successful in consulting firms, and we all three of us coincidentally had four of us had background at Deloitte, not at the same time, not even in the same cities, but we had big consulting experience.
Right.
We had Fortune 500 experience, and we all felt that kind of robotic presence, like we had to show up
Mm.
in a certain robotic way to be successful. And so,
Mm.
this idea of really becoming a human centered workplace and really knowing that it's possible to still be successful, to
Mhm.
communicate in ways that feel more conversational and less stuffy and less corporate, and to
Mhm.
listen to people in deeper ways, and to doing things like even not having the hierarchy of like companies where human to human, it doesn't matter your level. We're all going to have
Mhm.
open conversations. And some of it is the process and procedure stuff, like the benefits that we have, but other things is quite simply the way we treat each other, that we call
Mhm.
out bullying and harassment and bad behaviors. And I can go on and on with all the things that we felt passionate about
I love
that
it.
really make up a human centered workplace that, we all had good experiences. So I'm not going to bash my employers and say it
Right.
wasn't there. Part of it was time and place. Like this was late 90s, early 2000s. Like I worked for great companies, and they were just, it was the norm. It was more the norm.
Sorry, I lost you for a moment, but I think we're back. Par- You were mentioning part of this 2000s.
I was part of it was a sign of the times,
Yeah.
in terms of just what was the norm in company cultures. So it was all positive experiences, truly,
Mhm.
but it was also an aha that I wanted to help companies shift those tendencies. And luckily, a lot of it naturally has happened with time and with contemporary thinking and with COVID. But I think a lot of companies also want to get there and be more human centered and don't really know how. So we're happy to be the accelerator.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, why do companies see the value of being human centric? Or do you have to do some conviction and then maybe they see the value and then you actually lay out the process? Is there any kind of resistance that happens when you actually start to create this foundation? And what are some of the biggest common hurdles maybe you have to overcome to create this solid foundation for a human centric organization?
Yeah. Well, I am thinking of one client in particular where the executive team is just, I'll say, more old fashioned.
Mm.
And it's a little bit like, we don't have time for that. We have to run a business and we don't have time. And some companies, it's even like, oh, that HR stuff, we don't really have time for. And so, yeah, so time becomes a factor in some cases. And a lot of companies just don't really embrace learning and growth and
Mm,
things that are more on the employee development, leadership development, culture. Either they have a mindset of like, those things don't work, culture change can't really happen. So I think in concept, at its core, it's about having a purpose beyond profit,
mm,
and then treating people in a way that people are really at the center of that. So, the old fashioned, like, employees are our greatest asset, like, what company doesn't
mhm,
say that? But
mhm.
in reality, putting in any effort to make it happen when it takes time, money, effort, and it may digress from sales and other core business functions, I think that's the resistance that we get
Yeah.
sometimes. And that's okay. Some companies aren't ready yet. You can't always push change. Sometimes you need to bring it in smaller doses.
Absolutely. And what companies, how do you frame then the value add? If there is a resistance, I'm like you mentioned, it may not be a point where every company is ready for it, but is there a pitch, not that it has to be salesy, but is there a kind of value proposition that you see, or maybe even a type of company that's maybe, are you seeing that the advantage of a company adapting this, maybe that relatively they become more innovative because they're doing something this as an after effect?
Yeah. Well, in big letters on the front of our website, it says, when humans are inspired, high performance results. So
Right.
that's at its core. And, the language that resonates with a lot of organizations these days is employee engagement.
Mm-hmm.
So at its core, employees who are engaged are working in a human centered organization.
Mm-hmm.
And the data, and often we just turn to Gallup because it's such a recognized, credible institution for data. The Gallup data on connecting employee engagement with results, with business results, customer satisfaction, productivity, profit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so clear. You literally have these studies where you have two business units in the same organization, one of them with high engagement scores, one with low engagement scores, and you see the difference in their business results. So
Right.
the data is there and it's pretty compelling, and that's often what we turn to when we're having a harder time.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. A lot of the people who are here are entrepreneurs, start their own business. But I do think that entrepreneurship is not just inside or outside a corporate kind of element, right? There are plenty of entrepreneurs, right? They're inside a company who are doing innovation. So it's valuable to kind of embrace this mindset, like no matter where you go, and have this passion and purpose, like as whether you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur or a small business, like all of that helps. And I think that being able to show up authentically wherever you are is going to help you kind of find your superpower, find more energy in what you do, and ultimately have a better result.
Yeah, for sure. We created an assessment called the Human Factor Assessment. It is available for
Mm,
free on our website, huworkteam.com.
check it out.
Yes, free of charge. It's pretty low tech. It's essentially a PDF to print out. So we are working on getting it to be more dynamic, interactive. But for now, it's really mostly a conversation starter. So there's such power in sitting down with a coach, because we do coaching, or with your team, and just answering these questions, having a conversation about essentially how human centered is our workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is intended, you can do that on an organization wide level to look at your culture. You can do it on your team wide level, or you can look at it just as an individual leader. So
Mm-hmm.
to your point, entrepreneurs, I think it's available for everyone to do an assessment on being human centered. And by the way, it could even be if you are a solopreneur, we'll put all the preneurs out there,
Yeah.
it even can be used how you show up as a human centered leader with your customers, with your partners. It doesn't mean all the questions may not entirely apply if you're not managing a team, but I promise you that it will give you some food for thought to think about being human centered if that's something that's important to you.
I love that. It's a great resource. I need to go check it out as my own, as my own little business endeavor. I have a small team that I'm now working with. So as it grows, it's never too early to start thinking about this foundation that you create. And that actually got me thinking. So your specialty is focusing on helping these large organizations become innovative, have this human-centric foundation. But if somebody is a startup or an entrepreneur and they're seeing like, oh, well, is it too early for me? Like, or maybe thinking, how can I create that foundation? Besides taking this free assessment as a great starting point, are there certain things they should really not lose sight of to make sure they're on track? And again, as they scale, especially, I think that's the hard part. When you scale, how do you still maintain that human focus? Like when your team gets beyond a handful, it becomes harder and harder.
Yeah, well, I would say for starters, and this is a lot of the work I do with my coaching clients and also in workshops, is getting clear on your brand. What is important to you and how do you want to show up with others? And many people, the concept, even the words human centered, it may not have been top of mind, but just hearing those words and wanting to show up human to human, being kind and being compassionate and having great listening skills, it's a great time. And to your question, no, it's never too early to check in and go, well, what's going well? What am I doing
Mm-hmm.
that is going well? One of my certifications is with Marcus Buckingham as a strengths-based coach. So I always say, look at the strengths first. What are you doing well? And as a human-centered leader or entrepreneur or partner, and what do I want to do differently? And so at the core of that is your brand. How are you showing up with people? Asking yourself honestly, what would other people say about me? Do they say that I'm always too busy and I never have time, or that I slow down and I really listen and I ask the right questions? So take that honest look. If there's tough stuff, like that's okay. No judgment. Just take it as an opportunity to improve.
I can feel that. I can feel your passion for this, like your energy and like just how much time you've thought about this topic and then it brings you life. And to all of our audience, share with us what stood out to you, which questions you like, which areas resonate. If you share this with a friend who may be struggling in certain areas or wants inspiration or is thinking about how to build up this area in their organization, so that can help them along the way. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for coming off track with us. We look forward to having you join us next time. And thank you so much, Bonnie.
Thank you, Anya. This was so fun.
So fun. Until next time.
Okay, thanks. Bye.